The Charter of 1732 was a document signed by King George II of England that basically stated all the rules of regulation and regulations of the new Georgia colony, which was a colony in which people who had a lot of debts could pay off their debts. And this colony, the person who basically proposed to create the colony was James Oglethorpe.
There were 21 trustees who were elected by King George II, and they were elected to choose the people who would go to Georgia to start up the new colony.
The Anne was a ship in which Oglethorpe and around 500 colonists rowed in order to reach South Carolina, and from South Carolina they would go to Georgia to begin the preparations for the new colony.
Okay, so this is Yamacraw Bluff, where Oglethorpe met Tomochichi, and they decided, and Tomochichi allowed them to settle there, and they settled along the Savannah River, and this is where they colonized and built all their houses.
This picture demonstrates land ownership, which was basically one of the three main roles that the trustees input in Georgia. And basically this role stated that the land that each colonist was given couldn't be mortgaged, it couldn't be sold, and it couldn't be passed down.
Slavery was not allowed because most of the trustees thought that the colonists should do the work themselves.
Liquor was banned in the Georgia colony to avoid the colonists getting lazy, and that way they could do their work.
Georgia acted as a buffer between Spanish Florida and South Carolina because the British wanted to protect their colony.
This picture shows mercantilism, which is basically when a country wants to export more than it imports in order to earn a larger profit.
In the Georgia colony, there were no social classes allowed, so no one could have more money than another person or a better house or more land, so it was all about equality.
Life was really hard for the colonists. Some of the things that they had to deal with were complete wilderness, fear of Indian and Spanish attacks, silk and wine not being productive, and multiple diseases.
The colonists thought that the land ownership rules were unfair. They thought it was unfair that they couldn't sell it or lease it or pass it down to a woman.
Another one of the reasons why the colonists were unhappy with the trustees were that every other English colony were allowed to have slaves. However, Georgia was not. Therefore, the work that the colonists had to do in Georgia was much harder.
The colonists also thought that banning liquor was unfair, even though the trustees thought that it would prevent them from working. But the colonists saw it as a good option for trade with the Indians. Control over the colony was then passed down to the king, which then caused the colony to become a royal colony.
Illustration shows how at first Georgia wasn't very successful. It was just pretty much complete wilderness. And now they have successful cotton farms. They're very productive with all their crops and such. So they're growing and they're very successful.